It's July 10th, 2019. This is a walkthrough of the Ghana trailer. I'm gonna go through the entire trailer, front to back, go over all the equipment with you, what everything does, and how it works. So we're gonna start at the front here. We have the 300-gallon water tank. There's a garden hose inlet if you wish to fill the tank. Inside here, not sure if you can see it. Now, there's a float down in here on the garden hose inlet. You can see the larger float here on your 2-inch inlet. If the tank gets full, the float comes up and shuts off the flow of water, prevents the tank from overflowing here. The 2-inch inlet over here does the same thing. I suggest you use the 2-inch inlet, otherwise you're going to get about 10 to 12 minutes of water before the machine runs out of water. It'll go through 300 gallons in 10 to 12 minutes. It's your 2-inch inlet here. Best to grab maybe a pump truck or something. You got a quick disconnect cam lock fitting right here. You can hook your hose onto here, hook this up to your inlet filter. There's a sock filter down in here. This will filter any of the water before it goes into the tank. I will provide you with several of these bags here. They simply pull out and you can clean this. If this goes bad, then you have to replace it. You'll have some replacements. There's another mesh down in there, plastic mesh. You may need to clean that periodically as well, depending on how your water is. Once you get that clean, go ahead and just tighten this all the way down. There's a pressure gauge also on here. If you notice this getting above 20 psi, go ahead and pull your filter out, clean your filter. So water comes in here, gets filtered, comes out through the bottom there, comes into the tank here. Again, there is a float valve here. If the water level gets high enough, the float comes up, shuts off the flow of water. That is your drain valve for this. If you need to service this, of course you will have to drain the water out of the hose, drain the water out of the filter. Here's the drain valve for the tank itself. When you want to drain the tank, clean the tank, it's right there. There will be a hose just like you see there provided for you, quite a bit longer than the one I have on there now. It's just for testing. The unit is secured with ratchet straps here. Check these once a month. They shouldn't loosen up, but odd things happen. These are your outlet valves. 1.5 inch PVC goes back to the inlet on the pump. Under normal operation, these valves will be open. That allows the water to come through and feed this. Make sure when you are running the machine, both of these are open at the same time. Here's the bypass hose. This comes from the unloader back into the inlet side of the pump here, the low pressure side. This here is a port for priming the pump. I will go over that with you during the operations video, show you how to prime it and why you would need to prime it. So that concludes the front up here. You got storage for your guns over there. I've got the other guns set up out here, so there's 4 other guns that are not, you can't see right now. They're set up for testing purposes. This here is the heart of the system, 120 horse diesel engine. This is your power takeoff unit. You're gonna start the engine up. Once it gets up to operating speed, come in here and you'll pull this lever back. This will engage the PTO, which will in turn spin the pump and the generator here. The pump is 24 gallons a minute, 4,000 PSI. Your generator is a 120 volt generator here. This is powering your burners over here. Deep cycle, nice large Group 31 battery here. Should be easily accessible to pick up anywhere around you. I'm sure you have a Deca dealer worldwide. Control unit for the diesel here. Gives you your water temperature, your oil pressure. This is an oil primer. This is your stop. It's a circuit breaker, start button, and your preheat button. You will probably never need this given the environment in which this is going to live. Freezing temperatures, really cold weather, you will need to preheat. This will come with the manual. I suggest you read the manual. It tells you everything you need to know. We also have a gauge over here for the coolant levels. If the coolant level drops too low, this will come down here, this arm will come down, go to ground, we'll shut the engine off. Same with the water temperature. The water temperature reaches this set level here. This means it's too high. This will also shut the machine down. Your oil pressure here, if your oil pressure falls low, this needle will come down, ground out. The electronics in here will shut the engine down. Before you use the machine, every time, check your fluids, check your oil, make sure your fuel is good, your coolant's good, you don't have any leaks, your filter's clean. Again, read your manual. It'll give you all the maintenance information, all the operation stuff. Again, in the other video, I'm going to actually set the machine up and use it, show you how to work it, and show you that it works. You have a drain here for the coolant if you need to service your coolant. Again, here for the engine oil. You have some grease fittings here on the PTO. Again, read the manufacturer's recommendations, use the proper lube on here, and do it at the intervals that it is suggested you do. Pump, same thing. This is going to use pump oil. There's a small dipstick in here you can check. There's a sight glass right here on the back of the machine. Read the manual, follow the instructions on changing the oil, using the proper oil. This is just an air diverter to direct air out of the hot air from the machine out of the trailer here. You've got two vents here. I suggest leaving these open at all times while you're running. When you're not running, go ahead and close them. So what happens here is water is sent up to the pump. This is not a displacement type of pump. It will create a small bit of vacuum, a small bit of suction. You want to, the goal here is to keep that tank full at all times. That tank is basically acting as a buffer. So if you're out in the field, you're probably going to have a water truck with a large pump on it that's going to be pumping in, keeping this tank full. If that tank runs out of water, this thing is going to run dry. You never want that to happen. You will notice some sputtering, maybe some pulsations in your wands. If you notice that, shut the machine down, check your water supply, and make sure your water supply excuse me, is good. So it comes up here, comes up into the pump pressurizes it, sends it out on the high pressure side, comes into the unloader here. Out of the unloader via this hose, comes into our first stage of heating, comes out of this heater, comes into the second stage, final stage of heating, and then goes out the hose here into the distribution block, and from the distribution block goes into each individual gun. I'm going to go back to the unloader here. This is a pressure regulating unloader. This will keep your pressure regulated. Also, when you let off the gun, it prevents any spikes. It has to have a place for the pressurized water to go if all the valves are closed. So what happens there is water comes up in here, activates a spring, opens up the bypass mode, and the pressurized water comes through this bypass, goes all the way back down this hose here and back into the low pressure side. So it's basically just creating a loop is all it's doing. If you're going to have this machine running and the operators are not using it for any extended period of time, say over a minute, come over here, pull this PTO back, disengage that. You don't want this thing to run in that bypass loop for too long of a time. Again, I suggest nothing longer than a minute. If that's so, come over here, pop this baby off. Just going to preserve the life of your pump. What happens is this water in that loop just keeps heating up, heating up, heating up. It can cause damage to the pump seals, to the head. It's infrequent, but we like to mention it so that you can prevent any possible damage in the future. Out here, out of the unloader, this is the high pressure side. Again, the bottom is the bypass. This is the high pressure outlet. Pressurized water comes out, comes up into the heater, stage 1. This here is a flow switch. The heat will actually not work until there's actually water flowing through the system. So if you want to use your heat, you're gonna come over here, turn this button on, turn this button on. Your the burners will fire up. The fuel pumps will start pumping fuel, the igniter's going. You will not actually have a flame here to burn. Combustion will not occur until you have water flowing through the system. That is from this switch here. We don't want this part heating up if there's no water flowing through it. It just turns into a big boiler at that point without the water flow. Everything turns to steam, and we know what happens when you overheat steam, especially in something that's not created for that. So the water comes in here, goes through the flow switch. You have a pressure relief valve here on the inlet side of the heater. Water goes in through this coil, it's heated up, comes out here. This is a rupture disc. This is basically the same thing as this, just works differently. If there's a blockage in here, this will go off, or you have some scale in here causing the coil to scale up, causes pressure buildup. This relief will pop off. This rupture disc is one-time use only. This may or may not reseat itself. If you notice these leaking, replace them immediately. You will lose pressure, you will suck air if they are leaking. This here is the temperature probe for the thermostat. Your thermostat here, set to your desired temperature, and go ahead and do what you need to do. You'll see here on the switch there's a light. When it's on, that will light up, of course, until it gets old and burns out. There's also a small LED here. This LED should come on whenever the flame comes on. So you hit this button, you don't see this on, that means there's no water flowing through the system, which means this machine, or this heater is not flaming up. Once somebody pulls the trigger, you've initiated flow through the system. This switch will close, will allow fuel to come in and combustion to occur. This light will light up. This is simply an indicator to let you know that the combustion process is ongoing. The other box right there, you will see a green light that lets you know that you have 120 volts coming out of your generator right there. So back to this, water comes out, comes into the secondary heater. Again, I set these both about 180 and just leave them there. You can tailor the heat however you want to tailor it. This heater is identical to this heater, it's just ran in series. All the fittings are the same, all the parts are the same, it functions exactly the same. Down there is the diesel outlet, which will feed the burners. You have a valve for each individual burner, so you can service it as needed. Water comes out, comes into this block here. You have a quick disconnect fitting here, heavy duty 10K. This simply screws on, and there is a seal inside. Every now and then you want to lubricate these threads with some anti-seize. You have, this is a 50-foot jumper right here. There is another 50-foot jumper inside, which I have not set out yet. This is just for testing purposes. I've tested it with all the hose on there. That's how everything gets set under operating conditions, normal operating conditions. Further testing I just use with the short hose because there's no need to bring all the hose out here. So that's why you don't see the other one. These are your hose storage for your blue hose, your high pressure hose, your 3/8 hose, which is going to be for each individual operator. Each individual operator will have 200 feet of hose. You can't see it, but it's all kind of tangled up inside there in the building there. When you're done with the job, come over here and release this. Stick your hose in here, quick disconnect fitting, just like we have on the actual hoses themselves. And then you can just wind this puppy up. Each one of these will take 2 individual runs, which will be 400 feet each, or I'm sorry, 200 feet each, 400 feet total. So you'll have 400 feet of hose on this, 400 feet of hose on this. You have some extra storage area here. Here, the water comes out, comes into the distribution block here where it's distributed for each individual operator. Comes out in from each hose, and then you have your 4 individual operating units right here. These are set up for just testing purposes. I'm gonna go ahead and in another video actually show you how to use the machine, and you'll see all these things functioning. So that's it. It's pretty simple, nothing too intricate, I think. Again, I want to stress to you to read the manuals for the machine. The machine is pretty simple itself. Everything works great, but when you have a problem, that manual is going to tell you what you need to know. If you can't get it figured out from there, go ahead and give us a call, and we will be of whatever help we possibly can. Again, excuse the mess here. This is all just set up for testing right now. This is not the final product, but I wanted to get something on video for you to see. So the next video you're going to see, I'm actually going to operate the system, and we'll go through everything in depth in that video. Thank you.